You don't have to be productive. Like, we're not productive the entire day, but there's usually a time when we say, I need like 20 minutes, 30 minutes to really focus. And for that, you want your clean space.
Welcome to the Small Town Entrepreneur Podcast. Here, we dive into the challenges and opportunities of starting and growing a business in a small town. Join us each week as we share tips, stories, insights, and strategies to help you build a successful business in your community. We're here to help you spread your awesome. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Small Town Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Claire Bouvier, and today we have a very special guest with us. Meet Jane Stoller. Jane is an international speaker, best-selling author, and an organizational expert who is on a mission to help people simplify their lives and achieve their goals. But did you know that Jane's love for organizing started way back on her small farm in Sealy's Bay, Ontario, Canada? She would line up her pet cats by size, books by publication day, and stuffed animals by color. From those humble beginnings, Jane went on to work for one of the world's largest cement companies, where she honed her skills in project management and organizational efficiency. Now, it wasn't until 2017 that she founded and started her company, Organize Jane. Her company is dedicated to helping people declutter, simplify, and streamline their lives. And since then, Jane has written 2 best-selling books, spoken on stages all over the world, and even sits on the Forbes Business Council. And if that wasn't impressive enough, she also teaches at Vancouver Island University, where she helps unprofitable business become more profitable through their online courses and consulting. And she gives back to her local community through her pro bono work with One to One, a children's literacy program in Indigenous children on Vancouver Island and the Sea to Sky corridor. So, who's ready? Let's get jumping into the interview with Jane, where you're going to be inspired, entertained, and maybe today you're going to leave just a little bit more organized. I know I sure will, because Jane is in the house. Jane, we're so excited to have you on the show today. Welcome, Jane. We are so excited. I'm so excited, especially to have you on the show today. You've achieved a lot in your career as both an organizational expert, a bestseller author, an international speaker, but I'm super curious. How did you get started out in this field? And I'm really curious because being the Small Town Entrepreneur Podcast, do you think the small town upbringing influenced in any way the passion for organizing and productivity?
Well, thank you so much for having me. And that's such a great question, especially because this is the Small Town Entrepreneur Podcast. I thought this question was coming, and I share this a lot in my story. If you go to my website, it's always, I talk about how I started. And I think it's really unique because my passion started organizing, my pet cats by size. I grew up in a really small dairy farm in Ontario. So I just had to organize the stuff around me and, books and stuffed animals. So between the ages of 6 and 8, they tend to say is when kids start becoming organized or disorganized. And because I was in a small town, I didn't have a lot of other stuff to do per se. So I was able to start my passion really early and help others with that. So it definitely influenced it. This is my full-time career.
I love it. And it's really neat because I think one of my favorite things reading on the website, you talk about you were at a very early age. You were already color coding your books, biographies. Yes. Your mom must love that.
It really is like they say that you can see it in kids, but mine was just natural. And I do have Swiss parents, and Switzerland's an uber organized country in the small town and in the cities over there. So that also had an influence. But definitely it started at a young age.
It's in your blood. And that's why we need people like you, because then there's people like me on the ADHD spectrum. It's like, oh my gosh. And I can tell you a ton of our listeners today are thinking, especially more than ever, and I've had this conversation with so many people, there is so much stuff in the world physically now more than ever. We have so much stuff. And on top of it, technology is going at like a rapid, it's so fast, all the new things and gadgets and logins and this. And I hear so often, and even myself, people are feeling so incredibly overwhelmed. They don't know where to start. And I think for anyone listening, you're the expert. You've written books on this. where do you start? How, if you are feeling so overwhelmed and you get to the point where you're like, shove it in the closet, companies are coming, okay, throw it in, shut it. I'm guilty. Like, where do you start? Or even just like the whole digital clutter. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about it, but like, what do you do when you're feeling this overwhelmed? You know, where do you start when you hear the word organized?
Well, I'm sure anybody listening already was a little triggered when they saw the title of this podcast. They already started thinking about something in their life they want to change regarding organization. So it is one of those trigger words. And you mentioned like ADHD, and a lot of people are being diagnosed now with that, and even kids. And a lot of it has to do with, I did a lot of research into this about having too much stuff and being so overwhelmed. So we are overwhelmed now in Decluttering for Dummies. Like, I did it in 3 parts. The first part is all about mental clutter, which you've touched on. We are so, everything around us has notifications, and we are totally mentally cluttered. We can't focus. Speaking, I need to turn off my own notifications. I
know when you're saying
it happens to the best of us.
I'm just gonna double check that that's on airplane mode.
It happens to the best of us. See? And then the next is the digital clutter. So it's not just stuff in our houses, in our kids' rooms, in our closets, but it's also the digital clutter that we need to minimize. So there's, the overwhelm is real, and it's big, and it's causing issues in our kids, in our jobs, in our lives. So that's where, you need to start somewhere and start small. So that if you already had something in your mind when you started listening to this, maybe it's like, oh gosh, I need to attack this closet. I need to start with my emails. I need to start with my photos of my kids on my phone. There's probably 2 or 3 things that triggered you when you wanted to listen to this podcast. So I would encourage everybody listening to take note of those and start with those and start small, because a lot of people want to get everything done at once or get perfectly organized. It's never going to happen. But you have to start somewhere and start small.
And when you're talking, I'm like, will Jane, like, I wonder, does Jane ever feel disorganized? Like, are there ever elements like, cause you know how to do it, but it's like, it's one thing to know. And it's also that self-discipline. Like, you're tired at the end of the day, you throw something down, you don't have a system, you've moved. I had to get a new laptop, and I'm like, do I start a new system? Do I it is really, really overwhelming. And it's interesting when you said, like even organizing photos on your phone. So I like that. So you're saying tackle the one that pops into your head that feels the most overwhelming, maybe, or start small and create momentum. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, the word overwhelming is good. The one that makes you feel the most stressed. It's likely, and I am not organized to perfection either, and we don't have to be. So there's always things we could do better, but start with the one that's causing you the most stress. And likely, especially anybody listening has kids, maybe it's, their stuff, or maybe it's the time you can spend with them. There's not enough of that. So how do you make more of that? So is it a time issue? Is it a mental? Is it a stuff, that addict you keep thinking about? But everybody's different, and everyone's going to have different challenges and overwhelm. But likely there's going to be one of them will probably be around digital stuff. Time is a big one. Time they wish you could be spending on something else, and also an area of the house. So usually when I do this exercise with clients, 2 or 3 of those come up, and one in each section sometimes. And those are the ones to start every day, but start really small on those.
I love it. And do you find there's a common one that keeps reoccurring, or is everyone different? Because I personally, I can't start working if my workspace is a disaster, even though like once I start working, it becomes a disaster, but to start it, I have to have it organized, or I just feel that I get sloppy. I don't know. Do people, is there a common, do you see something that is trending, or not trending, but you see it often?
No, it's funny because trends change too. Like the pandemic, a lot of our shifted to home office. So offices were really cluttered, but now our home offices where we don't have that much stuff because we just need a laptop. So it's changed our way of working. But now we've noticed that we have more stuff because we've been shopping more. We spend more time at home. Right. So the trend has become more to home stuff, really, in terms of women, especially closets. Spring cleaning is coming, the change of seasons. Anybody with kids, they're definitely feeling the clutter because it's not just the parents buying stuff, but it's everything else coming into the homes from grandparents, from birthday parties. So There's a lot of trends on that now with consumerism and stuff. I think we've become even more shopping addicted because of Amazon and deliveries. So stuff is definitely a trend that has gotten bigger, but also the digital side. So we can't focus because we have too many tabs open. We can't focus because our emails are cluttered. We have so many notifications coming in. There's so many different ways that we are now becoming cluttered in that space. So there's a lot of different trends that are happening, but stuff has become bigger, and also just digital in terms of emails, notifications, and focus.
It's funny. I feel like I was knowing that we were going to have this conversation. I like ferociously was going through like notifications, shut off, shut off, shut off. I felt like it's almost like I knew we were going to have this conversation. I was like, I know notifications are so dangerous, especially because they make them red. And it's this little like thing that just like takes your eyes right now. You talked about this is the whole, I think a lot of the time is the overwhelming feeling because it's all in your head. You're trying to digitally sort, organize, but you're also trying to physically sort and organize your health, your house or your spaces that you're living in. What would be the best advice for people that are trying to reduce the mental clutter? Do you have suggestions what people could start just today going into the spring season? Because we are also distracted. What would you advise for these people, including myself?
So you've already mentioned it about your office space. So where you spend a lot of your time doing your most productive work, your revenue generating activities, wherever that is in your home or your office or both, that should be pretty clear of distractions, because even the more stuff we have around us, we're spending 15 seconds thinking about it or a minute or moving it or dusting it, whatever. Get rid of those distractions on where you spend prominently your time with focused energy. And that includes, whatever it could be that could distract you. I also use a time cube that helps me keep on track. So that's something that you can use right away. It's a timer, just like the kitchen timer. And it counts down to, let's say, 30 minutes. You're working on your emails, only do that for 30 minutes. So those are some things you can do right away in your working space, but also transferring that into your, first thing where you wake up in the morning, spring is coming, the closet. I'm telling everyone now to donate items and give them away. This is the best time where we can go into our closets and say, I'm not going to wear this season, let's give it away. And a lot of organizations, a lot of women maybe are changing careers. They might need new clothes for whatever it may be, but really think about that when you're going into your spaces, because that'll help you mentally focus. So your office, where you do a lot of your work, start there and then move on to your closet.
And I love that you made a note about something that it actually got me excited, because you're like, do you find that 15 seconds you move something around, dust it and put it back and you're never using it, it's just taking up space. I like think about like even like the toaster on the cupboard, like when do I use it? Like once every 2-3 weeks, but somehow it becomes something that's on the counter that it keeps being moved, cleaned and stuff like that. So that's actually really interesting to think of it like that. Like that time adds up, in the course of a day.
And even just that mental distraction of thinking, oh, I have to do that, or I've lost, you've just lost your mental focus. And if you're really focused on something, like, you really want to have nothing distracting you, that's your prime working time, just make sure it's in a clear space. That'll help get everything else on the ball rolling to make it productive for the rest of your sessions. And you don't have to be productive. Like, we're not productive the entire day, but there's usually a time when we say, I need like 20 minutes, 30 minutes to really focus. And for that, you want your clean space.
It's so nice to hear that from you, because I remember a long time ago reading an article, something about Einstein's working space was an absolute disaster. But then I was like, I'm realizing while we're talking, I was like, he didn't have a cell phone. He didn't have notifications. Like, he could have paper everywhere, but he didn't have all the other stuff. So I get it. Like, I think it's really important that this is the time to kind of focus on the things that are important and get rid of those notifications. And it does take work. Like, I feel like the cell phone companies and the apps, they want you, like, the default is that the notifications are on. You have to actually sit down and figure out how to shut everything off. Right. And the unsubscribing is sometimes very hard for emails. You have to scroll to find that unsubscribe. And then they take you to a link and you're like, wow, you got me.
I know. So every day I unsubscribe to emails, and I also use unrollme.com. If you go to Google it, and you can actually you can attach it to your email, and then you can actually mass unsubscribe.
Wow.
And yeah, that helps me. And then it usually every quarter I go in and just see what else I'm subscribed to and do that. So it really helps, but you're still every single day unsubscribing. It's never going to end.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things like junk mail that you get in your mailbox that now comes to your email. So you just have to get committed to unsubscribing.
That's
And
awesome.
the notifications too, yes, it's diligent to turn them off, but not all of them maybe are bad. Some of them you might want, some of them don't worry if some of them come on. Just be like, I need to turn that off, or maybe I'm just not going to check it for an hour. Now we're becoming too, oh my gosh, I need to do it perfectly and turn them all off. But no, you don't really. Maybe you need to keep the one on for, your child's baby monitor, or, the dog walker coming in, or whatever it may be.
Totally.
Right? There's lots of important notifications that you still want to get, and they're not all bad.
No, and I agree. It's maybe the upgrade, your Airbnb, like whatever, that you're going to go on a trip in a year from now.
Yeah,
Those
exactly.
things they don't need to be reminded. Yeah, no,
yes.
I love it. Okay, we're going into spring. You can feel it in the air, especially right now. We've had so much snow this year. So anyone tuning in Canada, specifically southeastern Ontario, we've been dumped with lots of snow, and we can feel it. I think the other day it was like 8 degrees and we were all freaking out. You could feel the energy in the air. And I love that this is the time, the sun's shining, the dust you can see more than ever. You're reminded of the snow's melting. I can now get into my garage, and I'm a little nervous about that. So I'm nervous about it because I know I have to tackle that. That's my job. What are the top spring cleaning tips from Organized Jane? What do you got for us?
Okay, I just actually put this together because next week on CTV Vancouver, I'm going to be doing a quick segment on this.
No way.
And sharing them. Yeah. So
Okay.
I've been preparing them because every year, it's a little bit different, but this year
Totally.
I find that the first step is to really, of course, declutter, but the winter stuff we didn't use. So a lot of the times we just put it back and we throw it in the garage. But this year, I think we have the best time to, did we use it? And if not, put it in a pile for sale next year, or clean it or declutter it this year. So there's lots, I would say, go through those winter stuff and really, take care of, did I use it? Did I not? And go for it. And as we're getting out our summer stuff, I know a lot of people in Canada, we have a lot of, camping, lake country stuff, sleeping bags, our garages are stuff. As we're getting that stuff out, did we use it the previous year? And if not, this is the best time to sell it. So get that stuff, just sell it right now. Even if you need another one in the next couple of months, you can likely buy another one. Cool. But if you don't, it'll be gone. So I'm always encouraging people, the seasonality is the best time to, if you have kids, help them make you money on it, help give them a chore. Go through your stuff. This is the number one tip. So tackle those garages. And the second tip is your entryway and your mudrooms. So as we're coming into spring, we're actually needing a little bit less stuff in the entryways, but a lot of stuff is accumulated from the winter. So as you enter your home tonight after your walk, or tomorrow when you come back from work, look at what's accumulated in your entryways and spend a good hour or two deciding how you're going to organize it for the spring, getting rid of all the, the boots and stuff and putting them away, cleaning them. But the entryways are one of the biggest clutter traps, and garages, like you mentioned. So those are my big 2 areas that I want everyone to focus on in Canada.
I know. And I love that. So you mean don't keep your winter jackets hanging in the entranceway until it's 30 degrees out?
No, it happens. It's okay. But a lot of them, it's a good time to clean them and, store them. Yes. But if you didn't wear them, I would I have in my closet 2 bins that say sell and donate. And the sell ones, throw them in there. The beginning of next season, they're ready to sell. Put them on Marketplace or donate them. But people are going to be wanting that the next season right away. And if you put it in there already, it's done. You don't even have to think about it next season. So just get started on that right away, because we get so excited to use our, get our rollerblades out and our camping stuff. But did we even use it last year? If not, sell it.
It's funny.
Donate
I mean, I have an excuse. I was pregnant and my husband suggested me not rollerblading. So let me keep my rollerblades. Okay. I'm going to try. Okay. And then if I don't use them, I'll sell them.
Exactly. And there's a lot of, as our life changes, it's normal. Like when you have kids, you're not doing certain activities anymore. And if any men are listening, or if you have, partners or husbands or whatever, they don't want to let go of stuff in the garage as well, because it's attached to their youth. but maybe they're not, going on the motorcycle anymore or the dirt bikes, and those are taking up space and also a great time to sell them. So I'm not saying go tell your husband, Jane said, but there's a lot of emotional attachment to stuff in the garage as well, related to being able to do sports we no longer do or activities that we don't do. That's normal.
And you know what? Amen. I think this is a great message, because I even think of my own lovely father. He has a hard time detaching from pieces, and it's interesting. And it's my mom that's like hiding them on him and donating.
Yeah.
So Dad, if you're listening.
Exactly. And somebody else can likely use it and be so happy with it. But I find that we're just so attached to what we used to do. So it's hard for everybody listening. And that's why we all need sometimes support, and, chatting with myself or reading a book on it or a resource is always helpful.
Well, and I think that's why we're going to, at the end of this episode, I'll share your resources, how you can stay connected with Organized Jane and listen to her tips and check her out on CTV in Vancouver, which is super exciting. And also just being reminded, because those things, like you said, it's not just physically doing it, but it is an emotional connection, I think, that people struggle with. I know for a long time, those are certain things for myself even, and you can see that. So it's not just like, okay, let's get rid of everything. And it's emotional disconnect that you also have to be prepared for. So that's awesome. So, well, this is great. We're going to make sure everyone buys your book. So what I love with this podcast is when we bring in guests like yourself, I love to leave them with like a step-by-step. I think this is the one thing we're also so overwhelmed, and every entrepreneur or individual I talk to, they're like, there's a lot of information out there, but I want someone that I trust and that I like and that is an expert to kind of take all this, curate the information, give me the step-by-step. So if we are going out into the world after this podcast, Jane, I know you have like 6 steps roughly of the next steps, 6 step-by-step advice. Can you give it to us? And then we'll have this to take with us on our journey as we get to be super organized this season.
Yes, because I actually love working with entrepreneurs, and it took me 10 plus years to develop this 6-step signature process. It's my one course that I help people in life and business with. And the first step we already talked about is getting your time organized, whether you have a business or don't, but it's really important for entrepreneurs, especially if you have kids too, because we are so, as women, tied in so many directions. So time management, I send all my clients, and I'm happy to send the resource to listeners on the time tracking on how they can get that organized. So the second step is all about processes in your home, in your business, documenting them. It's not a big, it's one-page document, and you share that with your team, your husband, your kids. This is the process for cleaning weekly. This is the process for, your admin assistant, whatever it may be. But I have a simple document that I share. We need to have that organized, and also change as our life changes. The process needs to change. And the third step is important for right now, because it's tax season, is getting our finances and accounting organized. As entrepreneurs, I know everybody is stressed thinking about this.
I'm like,
and that's okay. As long as we start to tackle it in a small way, every year do a little bit better and get a bit more organized. But as Canadians, we need to take advantage of tax deductions. And that's where it's really important that we get our finances organized.
Totally.
So that's step 3. And that's if you have a business or not. Step 4 is all about people and HR, who we have on our teams in our home and in our business. And it might be ourselves that wear so many hats, but we still need to make sure we put that on there. And maybe future team members like yourself running a podcast. Now you're outsourcing certain things. What are they doing? Who's on your team? And as you grow as an entrepreneur.
Amazing.
So that's the really important 4th step. And then 5th step is marketing and sales. I think everybody should have some kind of brand, whether you have a business or not, and a simple sales funnel, capturing emails. It doesn't have to be complicated, but have some kind of marketing and sales strategy organized, and not a complicated one. You might need that, but that's not, I can't help you with that, but just, I can start with a simple one.
Love it.
And the last step is my favorite, because it's all about sustaining your systems, every quarter reviewing them, updating things as you need to. In my course, I tell clients every quarter, look at your time tracker, go back to all your 6 steps and say what needs to be updated to make this more efficient, because we're always changing our life and business. And that's why we can't have one system that stays the same. So those are the 6 steps in a nutshell.
Oh my gosh. You rock that. I loved it. It was like, you can feel the energy, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I need this course. I need this. So what we're going to do is we'll make sure at the end, I'll push out this information, whether you're streaming it on the podcast channels or you're tuning into on YouTube. We'll make sure we have all this information so that you can continue to be inspired and follow Organized Jane and her amazing advice, because I think this is one of the most important things building anything in your home, in your business, is that organizational piece. It reduces so much anxiety and stress. And even talking to you, I'm so inspired, because I am like, okay, what am I going to do as soon as I get off this call?
So I love that.
I absolutely, we're so lucky to have you join with us on the Small Town Entrepreneur Podcast. And we're really grateful for the advice, and we can't wait for next spring. We'll have you back on, and we'll see how we've changed and see what the updates are.
Yeah, no, I can't wait to be back on, and I can't wait to also follow up with listeners, and they can feel free to contact me.
Love it. Thanks so much, Jane. We'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.